Hey everybody, welcome. This is the Tudor Oyster prints that we're going to be disassembling today. It's going to be pretty interesting for a older vintage model like this. A watch like this right now uses a ETA 2483. Without further ado, let's begin. If you take a look at this, I already took apart the watch in terms of the casing and everything, and we're going to look at the side view of this watch. Look at the hands and spacing. One thing I want to specifically note is the space between the dial and the case. Something like that, sometimes it's not that ideal, but then again, this is older version vintage models and stuff. Here we're going to be doing a preliminary test so far before we service it. So if you take a look at this, the reading is completely out of whack. 46 seconds and 1.4 beat error. It's definitely not ideal. But then again, this is why it's probably in for service. We're going to be taking apart the hands. We're going to start beginning the disassembly process. I'm putting the hands in the hand container for safe measure. Older models, you don't really know where the dial feet is, but right here is where it's at. So I'm pointing it out right there, that screw. You usually get a lot of requests to show the dials. So here is the dial for this one. Here's the back take of it. Very well made, very old school, and very well preserved if you take a look at this dial. Is an ETA 2483. It's very old school. Take a look at the rotor, the oscillating weight and whatnot. Very old school. Here you're gonna see me remove the automatic system screws. Generally for this one it's about 2 or 3. I believe for this it's 2. Once I remove that, the entire automatic system here comes apart, so it should be relatively easy. Once we get that apart, this is the view. So you're going to see the watch running from a microscope point of view. It looks very similar to a 2824 ETA movement. If you want to punch that into Google, looks very alike. Now, one of the biggest things when you're working on vintage watches are the balance wheels that I'll be very careful of. I slow-moed this video for you to show you the delicacies of handling a balance wheel. For the most part, vintage balance wheels, sometimes when you remove it, the slightest shake to the hairspring will really send it out of true. It'll send it out of whack, essentially, and it will literally throw off your entire reading. So I'm lifting this balance here just to show you the delicacies, and I'm slow-moing it for you. But when you're removing balance wheels on vintage watches, it's very important to go very slow. Some might even go as far as saying what I'm doing right here is wrong, but I'm lifting this up just to show you. Generally, we'll flip the movement over and we'll knock it out. To remove the balance wheel, it's very important that you release the power from the mainspring. So that's exactly what I'm doing right here. Once we finish removing the power from the mainspring, we're going to check the pallet fork. And if you take a look at it, it's in the dead center of the banking pins. So we know that there is no power reserve left in that. So these are the screws that need to come off next. We're probably going to take apart the ratchet wheel first, so we're going to go for that screw. Once we remove the ratchet wheel screw, we're going to remove the gear train screws, which will be this one and the next one right afterwards. On some comments about displaying the process while removing it, so here it is. I'm afraid I probably shouldn't be doing it for the whole watch because then it would be probably boring. So I tried to keep it as minimal as possible. But here is the gear train bridge. Take a look at that front and back. These are the wheels that we'll have to deal with. This literally, the layout reminds me of exactly of a 2824. I can definitely see if this was one of the inspirations for the 2024. Okay, so this screw here, you should be very careful. That's not a regular screw. that is actually a left-hand threaded screw. So what I mean by that is we're gonna actually turn to the right in order to loosen it, rather than turn to the left to loosen it. Once we remove that, okay, we should be able to remove the entire barrel bridge plate. All right, once that's all said and done, the barrel is left and the wheel right there is left. Sorry, that fell down. Okay. The dial side is right here. It's pretty bare basic. There's not much. There's the hour wheel, and then that's the Canyon pinion. It's very, very simple layout on the dial side. Very, very easy. Once you remove these two screws here, you get pretty much access to a large majority of the wheels on the dial side. If we took a look at this, once we remove that, we're going to remove this wheel here. Okay, if this would come out, it's not coming out. And this does happen. Okay, good. And then we're going to be removing the Canyon pinion right there. Perfect. One thing I do want to note that the barrel on this one is completely different than a barrel on a 2024. I checked and I compared it. Definitely nowhere near the same. So be very, very careful when you're working on a 2483 like this. The mainspring and barrel is completely different and very, very difficult to get. This assembly for the Tudor prints was relatively easy for me personally. For a vintage watch like this, when you send this out to Rolex, it'll probably cost you a great deal. But for me, this was a relatively simple repair. I feel like probably this is very mimical to a 2024. Just be very careful depending on the watchmaker you bring it to. But for me, I feel like this was a relatively simple repair. So I just finished servicing this Tudor Oyster Prince. It's quite, it's in pretty good condition. Take a look at the dial. The hands are a little bit damaged in the sense that it's probably from age and whatnot. Overall, the movement is an ETA 2483. It is discontinued. My thoughts on that are that it's not bad. It's good. It was an exceptionally easy, believe it or not, repair, but for the watch and the history behind it, I would say it's not bad. It's really good. This is kind of quite rare. If you take a look at this, original everything, original crystal, original bezel, original crown tube, original case back, bracelet, original big crown. So given the fact that it's this vintage concept, this entire vintage market that's going on right now, it's not bad. I feel like it's an okay purchase. I'm not 100% crazy about the vintage watches and whatnot, but for what you're getting on this watch, I think it's actually pretty good. This movement is discontinued, so be careful. People who service this usually snap the mainspring. Very common on this one. The mainspring is kind of brittle, whatnot. They don't create the same mainspring winders for this model as they do currently, and it's just very difficult to get any parts for this specific movement. So be careful when you pick up a watch like this, or if you're thinking about picking up a Tudor Oyster Prince. It is, at the end of the day, vintage watch. It's discontinued, so just be very careful in terms of parts and serviceability. Other than the serviceability concepts and points aside, I believe that this watch is not bad. I think it's well worth it for what you're getting and paying for. All right, and that concludes this assembly and my thoughts. Hope you guys enjoy the video, and take care.